eventually those people started coming to us and they're like, we want you to make us look insane. Other people in my industry being like, you guys did that? That's crazy. Companies I used to work at being like, I wish we could do the things that you guys are doing. When I'm like working with a client, we're also betting them like, will you let us go crazy? Because we want to go crazy. I want the editing experience to be easy. I want to be able to hand something to a client and not have them be like, when are we doing our like 4-hour long session about how to use the CMS? Log in and let me know if you need help.
Hello, Internet. Welcome back to the Code and Content Podcast, the podcast for conversations at the intersection of code and content. Today's guest is Kevin Green. If you've been on the internet for long enough, you've seen some of Kevin Green's work. I guarantee it. Kevin is responsible for some of the most unhinged websites that you have probably ever seen. He's a Shopify expert, designer, developer, can do it all, and most excitedly is now a colleague of mine, joining Sanity just recently. I really enjoyed getting to meet Kevin through this interview and getting a look behind the curtain of what it means to essentially define the personality of a brand through content and through design. And then what does it look like as a developer to hand over the controls of content to that team at the end of the day, and how making life easier for yourself probably makes it easier for your authors in turn. Enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. We'll see you in the next episode. Kevin, welcome to the Code and Content Podcast. Thanks for joining me at such short notice. Yesterday, you didn't know you were going to be on a podcast. Today, here you are in the Sanity offices in San Francisco, recording this podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, excellent. Now, your work, as I would have just shown in the introduction there, is quite out there. Jetskis.biz, which is one of the great domain names. I wanted to get you on because of just how unhinged the content that you produce is, and I hope that's a word that I say with love and admiration. Is that unhinged? Where does that come from? Is that just your personality projected onto the screen, or is there more to it than that? Is it methodical, or is it you just vibe out and this is what appears on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've just built an entire career around doing non-traditional things, and at some point there was a switch where I was pushing non-traditional and it made people uncomfortable to like put their business at stake, do that thing. And eventually those people started coming to us and they're like, we want you to make us look insane. And that doesn't always like, it's not necessarily a good business model to like make a really chaotic website that, you know, maybe it's hard to navigate, hard to use, or has like a bunch of like very untraditional tropes, but it worked really well. And we just kept getting business and kept getting people that like wanted us to build things like that.
Yeah.
So
do you think it's a case of the market caught up to your taste, or you put your taste out there for long enough that people got used to it?
I think it's just like the market's so saturated. When you think about the DTC space, there's 100 mattress companies, 100 drink companies, 100 pasta sauce companies. Like there's so much stuff that like all looks the same, and a lot of it looks really good too. Like there's not like a bunch of really bad websites out there. I think it's just like you have to really, really stand out to make a splash to like actually appear different.
Yeah.
And whether or not that works long term, like it at least like that initial splash is either successful or it's unsuccessful, or enough people talk about it that it gets their foot in the door in the like best possible way. And
Yeah.
4 years later, maybe they have like a normal website. Like,
but it sort of is that first impact to establish as a company or some personality or some attitude or something.
yeah, I think a lot of people like, I don't know, it's that when people think they're going to launch a website and they're afraid to put it up into a certain day, like there's like an email that goes out to the whole internet that like, oh, like we're doing it on the 12th and like we can't do it before that or after that. And it's like, all that stuff comes down to marketing. It's like, how do you want to launch on the internet or relaunch? Like if you have like a fading business that like doesn't resonate with anybody, like it's another opportunity to really just like push the envelope and try to show up. So
can you speak to like success stories? Like, I don't know how you track the metrics after the fact, or if it's more sort of you just put it out there and then it's on them. But have you seen like a big injection of personality into content make a meaningful change for a business?
yeah, and I think like we saw that a lot. So like I run Jetskis.biz, which is like a fake agency, but I'd also run The Couch previous to that. And that was actually more like a real agency where we had like real website, real partners, real stakes. And I would say most of the things that we did like had an impact like almost immediately, and people would talk about it. And it wasn't just like, oh, this cool site on Site Inspire. It was, people on Twitter talking about it, and like other people in my industry being like, you guys did that? Like, that's crazy. And like companies I used to work at, like Barrel and Red Antler, just being like, I wish we could do the things that you guys are doing, but they had like such pedigree that they like couldn't do that type of stuff. So like the recess site was probably one of the first kind of unhinged websites that I think we worked on and built. And the response to that was so positive, and we got so many jobs that were like, make us like the recess site. And we would always be like, no, like that's the recess site. Like we can make you like something else, but you need to stand out. Like they stand out because we did something so different.
Yeah.
And you need to let us make something else different. And we struggled with that for a while because like people would just be like, why isn't it just like the recess site? We're like, that's not the point. Like you need to stand out in a different way. So we had to like constantly get more creative with
Yeah, you're not selling just that design. You're selling the idea of looking different, which looks different every time it's applied.
And I think the more recent success that we had was like the vacation site. And that site still hasn't really changed. Like that to me is like so crazy and like a testament to like how good it was at the time and still now, because
it's a really great design. I was seeing that yesterday, looking at it again. That's like this hasn't changed, has it? Like I thought that, but that's
they've extended it, and they've added like, I mean, when we launched, they had like 2 products, and now they have, I don't know, 50 products. And they've taken like the system we built and just like blown it even further out of proportion, and in a good way too. Like
because it's not just like a crazy one-off stunt to give it a 90s style design. It's a design system that happens to look like it's from the 90s. So and I think extremely nostalgic for that period. So which I love, because I feel like the 90s is like an overlooked period for design and taste, like maybe with good reason, but like we've fetishized the 60s, 70s and 80s. Like the 90s I feel like is not looked back on fondly, and the vacation site goes a long way, I think, to romanticizing it a little, which you don't see a lot of. How do you know when you've gone too far though, when you're trying to really push into some crazy content? Like is it possible, like, because it feels like everything you do goes to 11. Do you catch yourself going to 14, 15 and having to pull back?
I mean, everything we put out is, in our opinion, like 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And a lot of that is because it is at 14 at some point, and it just gets like, it gets knocked back as we build it. And the more people that get involved, like we have when I'm like working with a client, we're also vetting them like, will you let us go crazy? Because we want to go crazy. And if they're like, yeah, I mean, a little like we might not even work with them, because we're like, we do want to go crazy. And that's where I think we thrive. And it always gets, once they're like, oh, we're going to have like 100 products on the website, and like, it's got to have conversion, and like, there's not review stars anywhere. And like, we have to like start to like sprinkle in the real things that like make a business, and like add some of those modules that are like hyper conversion focused. Not that we make like really conversion friendly websites, just like unique. And I think people get like stuck on like some of those traditional tropes, where like we have to put those things on the website, and it kind of, there's no other way to do it. Yep, we're gonna have review stars in there, and we're gonna have like that button that opens up the nutrition facts, and like we'll try to make it look as cool as possible, but like it has to be there. And
so you still have to strike a balance, don't you? Because like, you can be extremely creative, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't sell any product, if it's difficult to use, too difficult to use it, you can't convert at all, then business shrinks altogether. So,
yes.
but what I did notice yesterday is that not all of the commercial work that's listed on the site has that same energy. There was like a dog food brand, I think, that I was looking at that feels much more like a traditional e-commerce site.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that one? Like, you still do the occasional sort of more toned down. It's a nice looking website.
Yeah.
But it's not what I think of when I think of your work.
I mean, I think there's also a balance in we need work.
Sure.
Like we can't do only cool websites, and the cool websites don't always pay as well as, hey, like we want you to take our multi-million-dollar company and make us look a little bit nicer. Like we're not going to say no to that.
Sure.
I think we're still like pretty selective. Like we're not going to do like a military website or a political website or like any of those things, but we definitely still do a couple DTC things. Like I feel like the Headley and Bennett site is another great example.
Yeah.
It's a nice site. I had fun building all the really custom stuff. The sanity schema on that site is completely insane, and it's very complicated. And if I get to have fun in that way, like I still enjoy like the build out. Like it doesn't have to just be like, oh, this is super flashy on the front end. It's like, does this solve their business needs? And like, am I proud of this work in the background, even if everyone doesn't get to see like that part of the experience? So.
That's cool to hear, though. Like, so it's not just all about that flashy front end and because that's what's eye catching and gets on the award sites and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But if you still find that back end work interesting, then that's good too. Yeah. And what I think the flip side of this too, I think is worth talking about is that when you become known for such a strong creative style, it clearly hasn't cut you off from standard work as well. And I think some people might worry that the content they produce creates such a niche that they wouldn't ever get asked for anything else, but you still must get requests for standard D2C work.
Yeah, we get everything, honestly, and like not just DTC, but like marketing and branding, and that's because like the entire offering that we do have does extend past like development. And the person that I work with the most, Chad, he's a great brander and designer, and he did the Sundays design work. I didn't code any of that because like they had their own team. So it's just like me being a part of like the process and the brand of Jetskis, where that is. So.
Well, how much do you see of the of the body of work that it takes to put together a website or an online store from start to finish? How much is that creative front end to then? Like, is that 50% of the work? Is it actually only 20? Like, is it only actually a very small amount of the work, or is it a huge part? Because that's what everybody sees on the outside.
Yeah.
But maybe that's actually less work in the end than it seems.
Well, I think we're unique in that our websites usually define the brand a bit, and that's because we're launching a site or a brand that like doesn't exist. So the website is like the first time the brand's actually ever out in the world, and we're not competing with tons of out-of-home campaigns, like legacy commercial, like legacy branding. It's always, this is the first time.
Yeah,
there's like a Figma or a PDF that has guidelines, but no one else knows about that. And it's really just like this website, it's the first time it's ever shown up. And it gives us like a lot of power to like build this brand that's never existed with that. And that's kind of like, that's what Vacation was. Vacation was like, they showed up with a word mark, and we built them like a crazy digital experience, and that became their brand.
Yeah.
They took that and they're like, all right, well, let's take this whole website, turn it into, email marketing, out of home, like our collaborations, our partners. And like, we didn't do any of that external stuff, but we gave them like the foundation to be able to do that stuff. So
in a sense, it's really powerful work, isn't it? Because you're really defining the business to a large degree in those instances. And it's something we've mentioned in a few of the podcasts in this series is that the content can typically be looked at in a knee-jerk way of, it's a couple of blog posts and a couple of marketing pages and stuff. But content and design can really define what the value of the business itself.
Yeah.
It can be so much more than that. So with some of those some of the wild designs that you've done there, what's the craziest thing that you've had rejected? Are there particular things that come to mind where that didn't make it over the line, or are you pretty compelling at getting stuff done?
I feel like some of the rejection is internal. Like, I think we often push things too far, and sometimes it ends up in front of me to like build that thing, and I'll be the one that's like, yeah, we can't do this. Like, this is
Too much.
this is too much. And a lot of that is like, I feel like I build like a custom reward referral program for like every single client we have, and it's really unnecessary, and it doesn't need to be that way. And it's unfortunate that there's just like nothing that's standardized that we can use to do some of those things. And it usually it gets us in trouble, because like suddenly that becomes the only thing that matters. I mean, it's this like out of scope
This piece of tech that you've
piece
created
of
for yourself.
app, and like 6 months later they're like, yeah, so like how do we extend this and make it bigger? And I'm like, we just don't like this like, it feels insane to say like a lot of those things are kind of gimmicks, and they always work, and they always like get people interested. The vacation business card was a referral program, but they never used the referral program part of it. It was really fun to go on the website and get a business card and screenshot it and post it on Twitter. And like,
Yeah.
it was like a marketing campaign basically.
Yeah.
And that's what we've started to like restructure some of those like chaotic ideas to be, is like, hey, like this is a marketing idea. This isn't like some like bulletproof Sephora point system that's gonna like
Yeah.
exist for 20 years. Like, this might not exist in 6 months, but it's gonna make a splash. And it's like, how do you utilize that splash that like we want to help you do, but it might not do as much. It's not like a full blown.
Yeah. It's like that line, like, you do things that don't scale. Like, is it, if it might be, yeah, it might bite you 6 months later, but it might have significantly more impact than if you build in all the scale up front.
Yes.
So I know you've used Sanity for a lot of the projects that you've done. Have you got any particular broad thoughts on what it's like to build something that's in the service of authors? That's another theme when I keep exploring with this too, is that developers can at times, not always, but be too quick to overlook the needs of authors and sort of just like build a CMS and hand it off and say, there you go. Do you have specific guiding principles for how you set up a content editing experience?
Yeah. And honestly, it's a lot of from experience. From like, I do all the content population on like every single thing I build to a point. So like, I will do all the marketing, home, about, story pages, your frequently asked questions pages, your initial collections landing, a couple of like product landings. So like, I am also like the victim as like the content editor. Like, I want this to be easy for me
Yeah.
because I'm also doing it, and
That's good. You're putting yourself in their shoes.
I'm putting myself into the experience. And when like final assets come and when new content shows up and like, oh, we need these different modules, like I'm going in and either modifying, extending, trying to optimize as much as possible, but also trying to not make, I want the editing experience to be easy. I want to be able to hand something to a client and not have them be like, when are we doing our like 4 hour long session about how to use the CMS?
Yeah.
I want to be like, log in and let me know if you need help,
Yeah.
because you kind of shouldn't.
It should be intuitive enough the way you've set it up.
It's like pages, home pages, products, collections. Like, this isn't, I'm not like, it's not like some secret thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's all like pretty in your face. And there might be some like, some random text that shows up in a badge on like a collections product card that might be in a weird place. Like, I could have put that in a weird place, and like maybe I'll move it so that it's more accessible. And like occasionally it's like, hey, we need like a light and dark mode of this thing, or we need like a color picker. And I'll do my best to like automate that so they don't need to do it.
Yep.
Or I try to make it intuitive, put it in the tab so it's not always in your face. Like, putting the things that you need up front to like get either a product or a page or a module going, and not making every single field required. Like, I don't want you to break the website if you don't upload an image to something. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Which you would have unpacked that by using the CMS extensively. You would have found all those hard edges and removed them from yourself because you don't want to get tripped up by it. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I imagine too, you would want the front end to be making as many of those decisions in an instance where you've built a really creative front end, because you're not trying to turn Sanity into a design system or a front end generator at that point, which is a mistake we see sometimes. People putting in like padding controls and this sort of thing, which that's you're turning Sanity into like
No.
Illustrator at that point. It's crazy, but
I definitely draw the line on padding. I do add a universal spacer component that's just like medium spacing, or not medium, mobile spacing and desktop spacing. And it's 5 arbitrary values. That's like 20 pixels to 120 pixels. And then on desktop, it's more than that. If you need a spacer between things, like, this is it. I'm not giving you like granular control of every padding margin, because like, it just doesn't work responsively. And we have to add mobile padding, tablet padding, desktop padding, and then that becomes an array of different padding. And I've done it. I've built it before.
And you need that for margin and keep going. No, it's best to leave all that stuff out of your content if possible. So, no, that's cool. Is there anything else sort of revelations you've had building with Sanity in these years that you'd like to share with your work? I think we sort of covered the job you have.
It's less like, or it's more from a developer to developer. Maybe don't give the client everything, and like, it's to that padding point where as soon as you give them, an inch, they want a mile, and you suddenly find yourself building the most complicated version of a site or a CMS, and they might not ever even use, or they don't use all that stuff you did.
Yeah.
But the client's like, oh yeah, like, we might want to do that one day. And I'm just like, that's not worth it
Yeah.
to give you the control to actually break it more or underutilize it.
On the off chance that you might.
Use it. And I feel like I make myself so available to all my clients that when I do say no to those things, I'm like, hey, like, I'm not a ghost, reach out later on, that stuff. Like, I don't want to give you like every margin and padding control under the sun, because I think you're going to make the website look bad, like, immediately if you have that control, or you're going to do it wrong because you've made it too hard to manage that stuff. So definitely have to like get better at drawing lines with clients, because like, these systems can do everything. It doesn't mean they should.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just like, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, I feel like that requires two things: is to have real strength in your convictions that you have that you know what's right for the front end and for the customer, that you're providing those guardrails for their own sakes, but also that you've got a good relationship with the author, with the people who are going to be writing the content, to say, hey, let me be the expert on the front end stuff, and let me provide you the best experience that's going to work the longest term for both of us.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, and that only comes from having those conversations with authors and not just handing them a CMS at the end of the project.
Yeah, and like, making sure you have having those conversations. Like, I've worked on sites where those people aren't in the room, or like the CX people aren't in the room. And it's like, they're the people that have to deal with, managing the website, dealing with customer feedback. And if it's just like creative in the room, like, yeah, we just want it to look really nice. And I'm like, what complaints do your customers have about your business that like I can also fix? Like, we also want to fix customer problems, editor problems, like, not just make a pretty website.
Yeah. No, that is a good call. All right, cool. Thanks, Kevin, for your time today.
Yeah, pleasure.